Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. We have a ton of news that is flooding in, and a lot of it is very likely to be updated because that's how quick these things are coming in here. So first and foremost, in Iran, Central Command has begun their 12th straight night of strikes against the Iranian regime. And this is coming amid, and I now have credible sources that I can say this is kind of a lead here. B-1 bombers, or at least some U.S. bombing craft, are likely on their way to the Iranian targets they're heading for. And they could be on site to strike within the next hour to 90 minutes, possibly 2 hours. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that throughout the evening. Now, President Trump earlier today, July 23rd, told Axios that he was considering a massive attack on Iran as the daily tit-for-tat strikes that had been going on over the last couple of months. Again, there was this initial Operation Epic Fury series of strikes, and then it backed off considerably. And then there was this talk of, they're ready for talks, they're not ready for talks. You put your left arm in, your left talk out, and you shake it all about. That was bantered about for a bit, and now we are back to ramping things up. So the president told Axios that, quote, I am considering a massive attack, bigger than ever before. I am close to making a decision, and we are all set for it, end quote. He then said, on top of that, because people were saying, well, are you going to, there's reports, at least according to the Wall Street Journal, that you have told Israel that in the next 48 hours, you're going to make a decision. And so get ready, because whenever there are missiles launched at the United States, those often mean strikes at Israel. And then also the president had told the UAE and Saudi Arabia and Jordan and Bahrain, etc. And the president's response to this was, quote, we don't need Israel, and we'll do this without him. He has his own kind of list of agendas for the president of the United States. Now, on the matter of how the war is going and what he has to say, we're going to put that aside for just a second because there are a series of evacuations and arrests made by the Iranian regime that matter perhaps a little bit more than usual. So the United Kingdom yesterday temporarily withdrew embassy staff from Tehran completely. Said, as a precaution due to the ongoing security situation. That was at the request of Andy Burnham. It's not quite clear whether or not Andy, stepping into the prime minister's office, was doing something that the previous prime minister, one of the dozens, chose not to do up until that point, or if, again, things are just heating up. And after a lot of explosions have been heard in Tehran, again, we reported on this earlier this week as well, in which fighter jets over Tehran in the east and the west, kind of near a few embassies of the Europeans, saying, maybe if things get out of hand. The Iranians have a habit, both them and their proxies, the Iranian regime. I mean, when I say Iranians, I'm talking about the regime. When the Iranian regime begins launching counter missiles, the second stage rockets don't always kick in on those ballistic missiles, which means you can have failures and end up hitting something a couple hundred feet in front of you. So a lot of the embassies in Europe who had some diplomats still in Iran said, no thanks. And the Brits flew out yesterday. Now, France started trying to pull out and evacuate personnel from its embassy in Tehran around July 20th, earlier this week. However, the reason France started pulling its staff out was because Iran kicked in the door to the French embassy, which is a very, very, very big no-no. You're not allowed to do that ever. An embassy is considered the territory of that country. So for all intents and purposes, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps invaded France, which is not something I had on my bingo card for this year. But after all, I thought the Islamists had been invading France for years. No, please. No. So anywho, what actually happened here? 2 French embassy diplomats were detained. They were held for several hours, around 4 to 8 hours, on July 20th. That would be Sunday, by Iranian security forces. They were interrogated, and one of them was physically assaulted and abused. So again, for all of the human rights complaints that the United States could be breaking the laws of war, the Iranians detained illegally French diplomats who are not currently persona non grata. They've tried very, very hard, the Europeans themselves collectively, but also the French and English specifically, to avoid being labeled a direct combatant alongside the United States in this new Gulf War II electric boogaloo. So interrogating violently one of the French diplomats, probably not the best of moves. France described it officially as a serious, premeditated act of intimidation and a violation of diplomatic immunity. Iran's foreign minister, that would of course be Arachi, claimed that they were detained for failing to comply with Iranian laws and for unconventional conduct. I sure believe that. They were released and returned to the embassy and then later to France. Now, France summoned Iran's charge d'affaires and demanded accountability. And is that going to happen at all?
Nope.
No, not at all. Not at all. Now, Britain and France aside, Germany today announced that they were evacuating all diplomats and any individual of German citizenship in the country. This, of course, is not going to be the first or not going to be the last of the European powers which are trying to pull all of their crew out of Iran because things are getting a little bit spicy. Now, what's going on right now? Because we have a series of very intense strikes that are not getting any more relaxed. 30 strikes have been reported in Avaz, Iran, by the Iranian, Faytuks network, state-affiliated media. Now, right after the 30 separate strikes were reported, the Iranian state media took this down. So Iran said, we're being plastered, we're being pummeled, and then almost immediately, the Iranians took that down completely. Now, that is really close to the Iraqi border and next to Kuwait. And this is also important because earlier today, near the Basra-Abadan border crossing between Iran and Kuwait, there was a shooting. And then like a very small kind of drone package strike. We really don't know what that's about yet because the Kuwaitis are being rather tight-lipped about it. But things are escalating. Again, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had made some kind of strange threat, at least from one of their two regional commanders of the two different factions that have split apart along the Strait of Hormuz, that they might do some kind of land invasion of Kuwait. Again, we heard that earlier this week. There's nothing left to that. There is currently intense jet activity over Ilam. Now, the Ilam province of Iran is kind of in a slightly different spot than the Kuwaiti border, but it's along that Iraq border just a bit north of Avaz. So there's a lot of Western territory strikes that are currently going on. Again, Iran's tried throwing a lot of ballistic missiles and drones, not just at the Kurds in eastern Iraq, western Iran, but also down to the Kuwaitis, over to the Jordanians, and a lot of other Middle Eastern individuals. Excuse me, throat's just a bit dry. Now, there's a lot of other jet activity. A lot of U.S. missiles have also begun hitting. There's one other point of note here. While we're kind of setting up the wave of these strikes, why is this different? Well, the United States currently has one of the largest air bridge preparation movements going on that we've seen really since about mid-March. So the United States has spent all day flying every single craft except for your uncle's crop duster Cessna down to the Middle East. And we're talking all over the Middle East. We're talking to Israel. We're talking to one airstrip in Syria, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, over to Jordan, Bahrain, the UAE, of course, and then to the Fifth Fleet trying to, well, successfully, not just trying to, blockade the Strait of Hormuz. Now, there's also one final little piece on this preparation end that should be noted before I give you some of the comments and what's going on kind of overall in the situation at this 7:15 p.m. Eastern tonight. A U.S. Air Force E-11 Alpha battlefield airborne communications node, or a BACN, aircraft was crossing the Atlantic. So there are a lot of people who think they know a ton about intelligence reporting and military movements who've said, oh my gosh, a BACN is in the sky, a battlefield airborne communications node. Like, it's heading to the Middle East. This is a huge warning. We're getting ready to nuke Iran.
Nope.
No, that is not how that works. It is, in fact, a flying communications hub. It links aircraft, ground forces, and command centers that can't easily communicate directly, although that's very quickly becoming an issue of the past. And it is, to be fair, initially deployed during major air operations. But also, the United States has been rotating craft like that in the region for the last couple of months and hasn't stopped. So while some are trying to suggest to you that the end game here is the United States doing all of the nuking is untrue, and it's kind of trying to do a little bit of clickbaiting. Radio crew, we're going to send you guys to the commercial break so the FCC doesn't shoot me in the knees. And we're going to continue on the live stream because I have way too much to send people over to a break. Also, a big breaking lawsuit from Pennsylvania as well. It's a lot to cover tonight. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, while the radio crew is over at the commercial break, I wanted to mention one thing very briefly because I know that there are a lot of other content creators out there who are trying to bring your clicks over based on a bunch of really ridiculous nonsense. So I've received questions about this before. I guess there's this guy named Max Afterburner who's like posting thumbnails with nuclear strike and other kinds of like, oh, they did something huge to the military. We don't do that here. We don't do here. The reason that we post that Europeans are evacuating from Iran in their diplomatic circles is because the countries of the United Kingdom, France, and Germany are evacuating their staff and any citizen of those countries out of Iran. And then we tell you why. We keep the speculation reserved for just a little bit later. Now, back to the news because we get over to drones. The drone warfare side of modern conflict is ramping up for a couple of reasons. I can now say this, I couldn't say this for a couple of days. When I reported earlier last week that there weren't a lot of Iranian drones in the sky, the Shahed was notably absent. While we saw a lot of ballistic missile activity, we didn't see any drones for a couple of days. There was a jamming measure that was attempted by the greater Gulf states. And then that jamming measure was overcome. And so Iran has started throwing out a lot of these Shahed suicide drones out, and they've been specifically targeting United States troop resting locations. So barracks, prefabricated structures, belaying, bivouac spots, trying to hit anywhere that they can, that they would find a U.S. soldier, airman, or sailor, or Marine, Guardian sleeping. And so in that particular process, there were helicopters reported this afternoon and evening over Baghdad, mainly over the U.S. Embassy. The reason that I point this out, I want to make this clear. The reason I point out that there are helicopters reported over Baghdad and over the U.S. Embassy in Iraq is not because the United States is evacuating personnel from the embassy in Baghdad. The reason that helicopters are currently over the embassy is to protect it from drone attacks. Helicopters are a great method of defense against drones. And not just because you have a drunk guy blasting Fortunate Son who's manning the door gun. No, there's a lot of special tricks that we can mount on Apaches. A lot of wonderful, very special things that have every single serviceman, whether conventional or mercenary, always looking up in awe as a U.S. helicopter goes overhead. So we're keeping an eye on some possible retaliatory strikes from the Iranians, specifically at U.S. infrastructure, possibly embassies, as a lot of these facilities on the European side in Iran, not Iraq, are withdrawn from the country. Now, we do officially, as of 7:13 p.m., so about 6.5 minutes ago, we did receive word from U.S. Central Command, quote, U.S. forces started another night of strikes against Iranian military targets at 6:45 p.m. Eastern today. Central Command says, quote, this is the 13th consecutive night of strikes aimed to hold Iran accountable and diminish threats from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to commercial shipping. Now, this brings us over to the last piece here. And the last piece that I want to point out before we, before we kind of bring some of the rest of the media crew back in here. The Iranians are currently trying to claim that they have shot down a U.S. aircraft. And I want to see if we can actually line this up and get this loaded here for everyone, as we're making sure we're coordinating with all of the radio and TV crews as well. According to Iranian media, originally this evening, they claimed that a plane had been shot down over Keshem Island. That's near Bandar Abbas. This is the clip that they put up with it. Hang on just a second here. The clip that they put up with it. And it's really not quite clear what this is. So someone in the beginning section of the show, the countdown, that particular side of the question, the user engagement here, asked if we had any interesting UFO news. So far, we have no idea what this is. We know it's burning. We know that it appears to be falling out of the sky. It's not clear whether it's a jet, whether it's not clear whether it's a transport or a military craft. It looks a little too big to be a drone that would be falling at the pace that it's falling. There does appear to be some kind of maybe either an engine fire or some flammable substance that's dragging it down. Now, again, the Iranian media also originally suggested that it was a bird and didn't quite get that. Radio crew, welcome back from your commercial break. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast with the live stream. The Iranians have made a couple of claims. They've claimed they've shot down a plane. They haven't said whether it's a U.S. plane. They haven't claimed whether or not it was a UAE jet. Again, the UAE has had Mirage 2000 jets in active flights in the Middle East over the last couple of months. But what we do know right now is that the Iranians originally posted that they had shot down a bird. The translation wasn't correct because there's not really the colloquial term for bird that English speakers have for a craft. What kind of bird was the plane? They took it down for that reason, not to, carry water for Islamic regime state-affiliated media. Now, also, my crew has very kindly gotten me a clip from the 30-round strike over in Avaz near the Iraqi and Kuwaiti border. So this particular strike, at least right here and right now, I want to make sure that we get this side of things up here. Just looks like the 4th of July, but from Gary, Indiana. You can see the sky just lighting up. If you're on the radio, imagine a lot of lights in the distant sky. As round after round after round after round lights up the sky over in Avaz. It's a little bit difficult to see if you're just kind of looking from a bright lit screen as I am. It looks like a thunderstorm approaching. The United States is unleashing a lot of ordnance. Now, the President of the United States did talk about the status of the operation today in two ways. So right before the show, actually about an hour before the show, to be more clear and precise, the President of the United States posted on Truth Social, please let this statement serve to represent until further notice that from this point forth, any and all damages done to ships, cargo, or anything related thereto will be paid for by Iranian money, and that the United States has in its possession and controls. These damages may be very substantial, but nevertheless, this is a fair and equitable thing to do. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald Trump. So the president has threatened two different ways of retaliating to the Iranians trying to strike craft in the Strait of Hormuz. So yesterday, the president said that he would strike bridges, that he would strike power plants for every single rocket that the Iranians fired. He also said that he would hold the Iranians responsible for any actions by the Houthis. And the reason that's interesting is that Iran's tried to suggest that anytime Israel strikes Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, that's actually the United States doing the striking. That violates the MOU and the ceasefire and everything. Oh my gosh, the horrors. So that brings us over to what the Trump administration is now saying, which is Iranian proxy networks, which they've openly claimed. And again, activated their very last one, their very last Uno card they have to play here. Or I really should say, that being the goal of Uno, to have low cards. They're trying desperately to throw their very last draw four wild out as the administration in the United States gets down in the cards for Uno. I don't know. Use the analogy that you think works best. The last card they have is to activate the Houthis. That is. And so far, the president also coming up and saying that we're going to take the Iranian seized assets and pay for craft that are damaged. That side of things certainly makes a fair bit of sense on the diplomatic angle. The president did talk about the status of the war earlier today.
We're doing very well against the Islamic Republic of Iran. We're doing extremely well. They would like to do something, but I say they're not ready yet. They need more of the same. They're not ready yet. They got some evil intentions. We cannot let them have a nuclear weapon. If we did all this that I'm talking about your data centers, isn't that important?
So a couple of things here. First of all, the president making a remark to big tech. We'll get to that a little bit, maybe later in the show if we have time tonight, because big tech, which was on like the left-wing side of the political aisle in the United States in the 2010s, has now shifted to moving right very, very quickly. And that's also because, again, you have politicians like Gavin Newsom in California or Zoran Mamdani in New York that are doing everything they can to squeeze every dollar out of big tech. And Bernie Sanders, the senator from Vermont, openly siding with China over American tech. It's a whole mess. So the president throwing that jab in there, but also making it clear that the nuclear capability is still the big issue here. That is a part of it. The reason I have to say that's a part of it is that the United States does have other interests in the region. And these do need to be solved at one point or another. Giving Iranians the cards to, for example, right before the midterm election, send everything to hell and gone, isn't necessarily a winning strategy. That being from the administration itself. Marco Rubio was asked today at the Asian conference, that's the ASEAN conference on South Asian economics. The Secretary of State was asked about civilian infrastructure because Trump had said, hey, I'm going to start striking power plants because the regime uses that to communicate with the IRGC. Officers do not have some magical military right to communicate with enlisted in a war. That's not a thing. And the United States says, no, you're not going to get to sit there all safe and happy in Tehran, surrounded by hostages, and do whatever you want with all of the cellular data and the power and everything. We'll strike those sites. So a lot of the international media cried war crimes, again, absent when Iran tortures a French diplomat. But in this case, striking a power plant. So here's how Rubio responded to this question today in the Asian conference.
And the power plants. Just want some clarification. Do you rule out striking civilian infrastructure?
I think I saw, guys, I saw Arachi, their foreign minister, who the other day say or something about their policies, an eye for an eye. The president's policy is a head for an eye. I mean, honestly, that's what it's going to be. I mean, they will pay a very heavy price for the things they're doing. They're already paying a very heavy price. You guys don't know it because you don't cover it. You're not in Iran. You're not in the street. They don't have a free media. But they're going to continue to pay a very heavy price. Their industrial base has been decimated. Their defense industrial base has been decimated. They're losing launchers. They're losing radars every single night. They are suffering billions of dollars in damage, and their economy is a disaster. But despite all that, okay, these people who are calling us every day, begging, let's do a deal. They send us messages through other countries, third countries. I mean, they're running out of countries to send. Even I had countries here.
Hang on, Secretary, please don't get ahead of me here. Hang on a McSecond before we get to your order, because that brings us to what Arachi is doing earlier this evening. Arachi hasn't been able to land back in Iran and then go out to where he is. He's been island hopping as the foreign minister in other countries, but he is currently in Kyrgyzstan. But we'll let the secretary finish here.
Coming up to me, I just spoke to the Iranians. They want to do a deal. The problem is, every time these people do a deal, they either break it or after they make it, they want to change the deal.
Whoa, what a surprise. Are you telling me that we can't trust the Iran? I was assured from individuals who, for example, looked very much like me that you have to trust people at some point, or in order to actually effectively end a conflict, recognizing what is a threat and then eliminating that threat hard and fast with all of the weapons that we have, not holding a hand behind our back, which got a lot of our guys killed in Vietnam, or holding our hand behind our back and then screwing over the Korean War, not to mention all of the POWs that we screwed over in that particular fight. That kind of warfare doesn't work. It's what got a lot of US troops killed in Iraq and Afghanistan. Going all out wins things. Calling a foe wins things. A lot of soft-handed nonsense, I don't think that's really playing as well as a lot of individuals promised me that it was going to. Now, over to the last kind of major update before all of the strikes and the rockets' red glare this evening. So, while Europeans, the French, the Brits, the Germans, were being evacuated from Iran itself, radio crew, I'm sorry, I have to send you over to the commercial break. I'm not trying to tease you. You can head to the live stream right now and no commercial breaks. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We'll catch the audio side on its way back from the commercial. All right. Anyway, while all of those evacuations were going on, that brings us over to what Foreign Minister Arachi is doing. He's in Kyrgyzstan. Now, if you, like every other normal person on planet Earth, doesn't know where all of the different stands are, allow me to paint you a bit of a picture. Right next to Iran, you have the very lovely Turkmenistan and all of its dust-covered hills. Then you have Pakistan and its dirt-covered hills. And then a little bit north of that, you have Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan and their dirt-covered hills. And then a little bit north of that, you get Kazakhstan and their dirt-covered hills and some trees. And then there's also Tajikistan, but don't worry about that right now. So in the wonderful Stans region, which is, by the way, way different than Kurdistan, which is like on the other side of Iran and really should, start doing things. Another tale for another time. Arachi shows up in a special impromptu conference. Say, Tony, how do you know this is an impromptu conference? Because the only thing that they could film Arachi stepping off of the plane with is a Motorola Razr from 2007. I'm serious. We tried all of about 10 minutes searching through kind of the internet streams here to find better footage of this than what appears to be recorded on a potato that someone shoved a Kodak into. And we also see the Iranians flying, again, a kind of different craft than you would expect the foreign minister to be flying on. And he is meeting with officials from China and Russia. And to go ahead and save you a bit of the details here, Russia and China, from all of our intelligence reports and also the photos of the people on the ground, blurry as though they are, just appear to be like second, third string diplomats that they've sent down. Not exactly sending down the Russian minister of war and the Chinese, I don't know, head chef at Panda Express or whatever, however they do the diplomatic order of rule in Winnie the Pooh's communist wonderland. But Arachi is there to beg for support. They're there to beg for support because they are, in fact, running a little bit lower than they would like on some of the drone infrastructure. Also, we now have more information on a story reported on earlier this week, which was that the Russians had been attempting to supply some type of jamming equipment onto the Shahed suicide drones. There's a problem, though. The problem is that the Shahed suicide drones are not meant to return. They are, by their very nature, suicide drones. And so there are a couple of emerging kind of reports from inside Iran, from those who are trying to leak things out because the internet has not been able to be shut back down. The IRGC has tried to shut the internet down again, and they have now failed like 3 or 4 times in the last month. But anywho, the landing gear of sorts that they tried to put on the Shahed suicide drones so far has fallen off, and so destroyed the drone upon attempting to land the drone. Number 2, the battery is too small, so it never even makes it back home. It just kind of falls short. There was a drone recovery team actually from the United Arab Emirates that was able to pick one of these up out of the Strait of Hormuz. And believe it or not, the way that this drone recovery team was powering the boat was like by rowing. Just little fun little bits of trivia for things that you don't hear over in, the United States side of things. And then last but not least, one of the Shahed drones that again had some of the Russian tech on it, didn't quite successfully not only make it back, but the landing gear snapped off, and apparently the shrapnel was caught in an individual who was trying to collect the drone. Now, again, there's reports that an additional US B-1 bomber, the Lancer, is now taking off and heading towards Iran from the United Kingdom. Heading back that way, we are going to have to pick up our radio and TV audience from their bottom of the hour news and ad break here in just a second before we pivot to, again, this breaking lawsuit out of Pennsylvania that's going to get things very spicy. Radio crew, welcome back from the commercial break. Sorry I wasn't able to do a lot of the pause and exciting fanfare. There's a bunch of news going on. Just a ton of news going on tonight. So in the meantime, while we're here on this, we're keeping an eye. Avaz over near the Kuwaiti border is getting pelted. It is getting absolutely pelted. There's now explosions reported along the southern coast of Keshem Island. It's not clear if this is in response to a downed craft or perhaps a crew trying to retrieve information about a downed craft near Keshem Island. And so far tonight, it appears only Avaz and Bandar Abbas near Keshem. So again, near the Kuwaiti border and the Iraqi border, and then down near Bandar Abbas, as well as a site about 30 miles, 40 miles north of Avaz, have been struck, but they've been hit pretty hard. It's also not clear. I've seen some suggestion from individuals that I trust, kind of on the analysis side, pointing out that there may be a bit of a feint happening in which the United States, you saw this in World War I and World War II, where artillery would fire on a place that the infantry was not about to rush. And then all of the enemy forces who were currently being hit by artillery would point their guns to where the artillery sites were firing, because as soon as they stopped, the earlier days of World War I, the artillery fire would cease, and then the infantry would try to come right through where the artillery was firing. So after trying this strategy and people getting used to things, you would see this feint happening where the artillery would fire on one location, and then the infantry would then go strike somewhere else, or an armor division would try to rush as quickly as they could around to another side of things. So it's very unclear right now whether or not these B-1 Lancers are just rebasing, whether they're just moving to another location, or whether there is a strike that we're going to be reporting on, knowing my luck right before the end of the show, later this evening. Now, in the meantime, while state media is trying to get its story straight from the Iranian side, over here in the United States, there's other news that is also rather spicy. And I say rather spicy because the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro, announced a lawsuit today in which he said that because the Department of Homeland Security had attempted to request voter roll information. So the voter roll information that I'm talking about here specifically, Executive Order 14399, the Ensuring Citizenship Verification, Integrity in Federal Elections Executive Order. The Trump administration ordered states to provide information on mail-in and absentee voting. So it required the U.S. Postal Service to use a very specific kind of envelope. It required tracking to be displayed so that you could tell if you were the state from here, there, wherever, where your ballot is, where your ballot's been sent to. If you're registered to vote, they let you know when your ballot's being sent out to you. So if you haven't received your ballot, you can say, hey, that's a problem. Or, hey, wait, I didn't vote. Why is it telling me that my ballot's being sent in? Also, it mandated a creation of a national list of eligible voters. By this, it just meant that states had to submit their voter rolls and say, hey, here are the people, so that the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice could say, okay, there aren't any felons on that list. There aren't people who are dead. Shout out to Chicago, Illinois. There aren't people who are not yet naturalized, meaning they're becoming United States citizens, and they might be by November, but they also might not be. Their date for swearing in as a citizen is not taking the oath, is not set in stone. So we don't know if they're going to be able to vote or not. They certainly can't vote in a primary. And then last but not least, people who just aren't supposed to be voting at all. If they are perhaps illegal immigrants, if they are those who are here on a green card, if they're just visiting, as the Monopoly board likes to say. So Josh Shapiro, right after New Jersey has been caught in a massive scandal that is getting worse by the second, for having, again, the Department of Homeland Security, through Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen, former senator, saying that there were over 36,000 individuals found on New Jersey voter rolls that shouldn't be there. New Jersey announced, well, it's 6,600 so far, 6,600, and 400 of those people who should not have been voting because they're not citizens of the United States, they're not eligible to vote, they went ahead and voted anyway. So a wild time for this lawsuit to come out. I'm believing this is likely where you're going to see some type of national injunction. This is in federal court. So this over from Governor Josh Shapiro, Democrat governor of Pennsylvania, quote, breaking, I'm suing the Trump administration. I hate it. If you are the one doing the post, if you're not a news outlet, if you're not a content creator, you don't need to put breaking on your thing. You just make the announcement. The journalist outlets do the breaking. There's little fun facts for you and your kids at home. Anyway, he says, breaking, I'm suing the Trump administration for holding millions of public safety dollars hostage in an attempt to take control of our elections. So public safety dollars, what does that mean? The Trump administration says, hey, if you do not go through with providing voter rolls and meeting the minimum standards set forward by the U.S. Postal Service, then the United States will withhold certain funds. Meaning that you are allotted a certain amount of funding, and if you don't follow the standards, so for example, if let's say Iowa says, screw the EPA, we're going to dump toxic waste into every lake in the state, then the federal government will say, okay, while we are coming for your scalp, we're also not giving you any of the EPA grant dollars. So it's a carrot and a stick approach. Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee was pitching this idea to us here on the Tony Kinnett Cast earlier this week. And I said, and you'll have to forgive me, I said at the time to her, although I really like Senator Marsha Blackburn, I said, that's not going to work. And the reason is right here, because you'll have a state who you'll say, okay, well, if you're not going to play by the rules, you don't get any money. And so what happens? I told you at the time, you're going to have a lawsuit. So Josh Shapiro sues and says, well, you got to give me the money because, quote, Donald Trump is actively threatening the safety of our communities and withholding resources from our law enforcement and first responders in an effort to seize control of the election system. The pearls are clutched so hard he's going to give himself carpal tunnel. It says withholding this funding would be dangerous under any circumstance, but to do so in an attempt to control our elections is a new low, even for Donald Trump. Oh, get my smelling salts, Martha. Pennsylvanians deserve leaders who protect their safety and right to vote. That's why we're taking him to court. Hang on a second. Their safety and their right to vote. What do you think is going to hurt the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in their voting here? Because, again, other states that have provided their voter roll information. So, for example, the state of Indiana, which is where we're broadcasting this show from, though all of my colleagues are in Washington, D.C. at the Daily Signal. Even though I'm in Indiana, my state submitted the voter roll stuff and the information to the federal government. You know how many people have been scraped off and thrown off of our election system in a wanton election controlling measure? Like none. Like none. I'm just not seeing the nonsense. I'm just not seeing the reason for all of the pearl clutching unless you are worried about something being found on this voter information. It seems to me that what you might do is say, okay, fine, we're going to play by your rules, and you better not throw off a single person on these voter rolls who is just changing their name or just freshly married or going to be naturalized by the election in November. Because then, a couple of weeks before the election, if this fails, you'd have a nationwide injunction, it would be a mess, and you would likely gain a lot of support. And it's not just me saying this, by the way. The reason this is such a terrible move is because New Jersey was just caught in this absolute mess of their own making. So originally it started out as, oh, it's just this kind of a thing. It's just a little software error. And now it is turning into a lot of questions that Governor Mickey Sherrill. What to? Well, she knows how many individuals have so far at least been caught, 400 that she knows of, that voted in elections, that she says that these people who shouldn't vote that are non-citizens, which this never happens, this kind of a situation, well, she says that in this instance, they were Republicans and Democrats and independents from all over. The questions have been coming in. How many? How many of these people who weren't supposed to vote voted Republican? How many were Democrat? Because there seems to be a lot of pattern recognition going on in the country, and a lot of people are kind of curious. Here is Cheryl when getting these questions today. She is dodging it like she's on ESPN 8 The Ocho. Like she's facing off against Globo Gym. She is dodging, dip, dive, duck, and dodging.
We move very quickly because the people of New Jersey obviously deserve accountability and transparency. We're running an independent investigation right now to get to the bottom of exactly how this happened and what's going on. But, it is not a surprise to me that the federal government, that the Trump administration wants to immediately weaponize this against people.
So you're calling it weaponizing. Again, if the DHS, if the Trump administration says there are threats, we need to ensure, because there are threats, that the voter rolls are secure. Americans, according to every available polling piece of information, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, Americans in every single party majority do not trust the American electoral system as a whole. They don't. They do not trust it. And so extra steps must be taken to restore such trust. But if you're going to call it weaponization right after your state has been caught with a huge error, now people start to suggest there might be something rather insidious to the error.
As opposed to focusing on making sure that we're running free and fair elections. That's my focus. I would say again that Trump has done more to undermine our election system than anyone in my lifetime, including Vladimir Putin. He has attacked the 2020 election, which he ran. He has also sent out an insurrection against us when we were trying to certify that election.
Has been disproven so many times. It's so embarrassing.
He then has defunded all of the ways in which we protect and keep our elections safe. So contrary to what he's doing here in New Jersey, we are focused on running fair elections.
Yeah, it just so happens, though, that when you're not releasing any of that information under the guise of, well, it's an independent election, and then running out before reporters can ask you any question is a bad sign. Running out of the room when you just gave like your little gubernatorial pep speech, which is the exact same one that you just gave, not a good sign, folks. It's not. Radio crew, we're going to send you to your last commercial break here. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. It gets worse. All right, while the radio crew is in their commercial, consider, for just a moment, subscribing to our brand new YouTube channel where we're airing a lot of stuff we don't have time to fit into this particular show in our broadcast time. That's at Tony Kinnett Cast over on YouTube, TonyKinnetTcast. Consider doing a little subscribing. Let's move on, because that's not what this particular show is about. The media is really struggling here because the Democrats are starting to split on this. You know, the Democrats' civil war is starting to get into some really oof territory when they start fighting with each other on voter ID. So it starts at the media. CNN host Michael Smerconish has made it very clear. I believe this was on Sirius satellite radio. Says, you just can't say that illegal immigrants aren't voting in American elections anymore. You can't say it.
There is no evidence that...
Hang on, that's not the clip I wanted. I wanted the clip of Michael Smerconish, not the group of Democrats saying that it doesn't happen. My goodness. Who could have done such a thing? Do we have that clip ready to go? Oh, it'll be a shame if we don't, because it's an absolutely stellar one. Oh, we might have to press on. Ah, what a shame. We'll keep on here. Our Elizabeth Mitchell, our White House correspondent, she did get a chance to talk to the press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, today, asking about what the Trump administration plans to do. Are there going to be prosecutions for these individuals who were caught voting illegally in elections, in federal elections?
Secretary Mullin said that election officials that knowingly allowed non-citizens to vote could be prosecuted and fined. Is this option being considered in New Jersey after the governor revealed that thousands of non-citizens were registered to vote there?
Well, for any prosecutions, obviously, I would always defer you to the Department of Justice. But what I will say on New Jersey and this governor, the fact that she just all of a sudden decided to put out a press release saying President Trump and Republicans have been right about non-citizens on our voting rolls is not a coincidence. I think this governor is saying this because she realizes this administration is serious about getting to the bottom of illegal aliens voting and being on our voter rolls in our country. The Secretary of Homeland Security, as you know, sent a letter to several states, including New Jersey, requesting that non-citizens that are on their voter rolls need to be reported to DHS and need to be removed from those voter rolls. So that's why all of a sudden she is speaking truth about the fact that this does take place in states across the country. It is completely unacceptable to have non-citizens on American voter rolls voting in U.S. elections.
Now, here's the other side here, because we do have this clip, and I want you to see the media trying to kind of come around, and it's really awkward for them. So here is CNN host Michael Smerconish on this.
We move very...
There was an analysis in the Times in January on which I relied, January of 2026. Initial review finds no widespread illegal voting by migrants, puncturing a Trump claim. And I remember discussing this at length, having guests on to talk about it, and then coming to the conclusion that you referenced, this doesn't happen. I can't say that any longer. I don't know how often it does happen, but I can't say any longer this never happens.
And here's the really rough part for people like Governor Mickey Sherrill of New Jersey, because she's claiming that all of this was just a glitch. It was just a glitch. So here's the rough part. Even if it was an initial glitch that caused the registration to occur, there are still 400 people who chose to then go and vote. So you can't make those kind of claims. And again, also announcing what it was or wasn't before the investigation is complete. Yeah, again, I just don't think that that's going to work the way that you believe it's gonna. Now, before we finish up here, I do want to make it perfectly clear that as we get into some of the next little bits, I think that we have all of our clips censored language-wise. But just in case we don't, viewer discretion advised, it's getting spicy. Radio crew, welcome back from the commercial break. We've got a little bit more as the Democrat Party splits on all things voter ID. Was not expecting this, was not hoping. Well, I won't say if I was hoping or not. I was not expecting in any way, shape, or form to see the Democrats in the United States trying to weasel their way around attacking each other over voter ID. But that is where we are. So, of course, you have the traditional side. You have like the Pramila Jayapal of Washington going out and trying to suggest that she's totally against insider trading. She just didn't vote for it. And she's also totally for voter ID. She just voted against it. Best of luck to you with this. Anyway, here's the line.
Should members of Congress be able to profit from their official position? Absolutely not.
But
86% of Americans agree with me that members of Congress should be banned from trading stocks.
But
it is the number one issue that people want us to take on to get rid of the corruption infiltrating our government.
Now, please don't look at her financial profile in which she has invested $737,500 in various stock market, mutual funds, tax managed U.S. Core 2, or of course her $1.7 million. Don't look at any of that. That would be silly. But anywho, she's totally against it, guys. You got to believe her.
That is exactly why I have led on this issue. I've worked with colleagues on both sides of the aisle to put together a bipartisan bill that actually bans stock trading for members of Congress.
But
we've been trying to get Republicans and the Speaker to bring it to the floor, but they haven't, because they know that if they did, it would actually pass.
But hang on a second here. You've been talking to Republicans. Aren't they the majority in the House? What are you talking about here, Chief?
And there are big forces in some of the richest members of Congress who want to keep profiting off of insider trading and voting in the interests of their own pockets instead of your interests.
Okay.
That's just wrong.
Now here's the but, though.
They are taking it one step further. Instead of putting our bipartisan bill on the floor, Republicans are bringing a weak-ass bill to the floor that's called the, quote, Stop Insider Trading Act. Except, newsflash, it does not stop insider trading or stock trading.
So it does, actually. It does. So if you're going to make this argument, which is that she says there's a poison pill in the bill, which you could make the case there is. Thomas Massey was yelling about that or whatever. But it does, in fact, stop insider trading, stock trading by members of Congress. It does. It does, in fact, do those things. What she's mad about is that it also includes provisions for requiring voter ID for federal elections.
You heard me right. They're calling it one thing and hoping you don't notice that it does nothing to ban stock trading. Their BS bill still allows members of Congress to own and sell stocks based on insider information.
I've looked at the bill. It does not.
And to make legislative decisions based on whether or not it's good for the value of those stocks.
So the stocks that are referred to, it exempts basically long-term investments that are set and forget. So like a very diverse Morningstar mutual fund is left alone. Because if you just say, well, anything that benefits anything, well, then no bill would ever be allowed to pass because you would have people investing in any industry ever. What the bill says is you can't do like these active trades like, for instance, we saw Nancy Pelosi doing with like NVIDIA for ages and ages.
Not on whether it's good for their constituents.
However, she has reserved the worst part of her ire, though, for the new requirements for voting.
Fact. There are new requirements on voting, a new extremely limited set of documents that you would have to provide to vote.
It's not extremely limited.
And even new requirements on requiring copies to be sent in with mail-in ballots.
Copies to be sent in with mail-in ballots? Oh no, they might track mail-in ballots and make sure they're secure. Oh, the horror. Oh no.
That's all a surefire way to make it harder for all Americans to vote.
All Americans to vote.
Including young people, voters of color, tribal communities, and women.
Now, I like this one. I do, for a couple of reasons. First of all, let's hit tribal communities because it's easy. Not only do I have my own very fancy, wonderful little cards for my own ID and my passport and things, I also have this thing called a BIA card. I do. It's my tribal card that would allow me, if I wanted to, for some reason, to get really, really, really horrible dental care for free as a member of the actual, not Elizabeth Warren, Cherokee tribe. I could, if I wanted to. The very same card that would allow me, if I wanted to go run for the governor of the Cherokee section of Oklahoma. I don't know why I would do that, but that kind of a thing. Guess what? That's one of the acceptable pieces of ID. So she's lying there. The women thing is the suggestion that once women get married, they forget how documents work and that they're relegated forever to putting the wrong name in all the time. Oh no, the horror. So they're smart enough to notify the Social Security office of the name change, but not the DMV. Oh, wait, that's where they get their licenses from. So that's a big no. And then people of color. Nothing like saying black people are too stupid to get ID. There you go, sweetie.
So not only does the bill fail to stop Congress from profiting off of their positions of power, it also undermines our democracy. And
oh, no, it makes it harder for people who aren't citizens to vote. Now, again, the actual counter to this now is not from yours truly. The actual counter is from inside the party. So again, we're going to get into this. For example, James Carville, the mastermind of the Bill Clinton style election, he now comes out here to suggest very, very clearly that if you're against voter ID, you're kind of really, really stupid. Because voter ID makes sense and you could just call Republicans on the carpet for this. Oops.
I don't know if we're not better off said, okay, we'll take that alternative ID, bring your gas bill or your light bill or something. Because for whatever reason, it polls at 75%.
There you go. There are a lot of Democrats who are recognizing, again, Carville's very anti-socialist in the party kind of a thing. He wants to win. He thinks it's going to crash. He's right, by the way, that it's going to crash it. So now going after the progressives over voter ID in the DNC. Oh, joy.
I don't think people are aware of it. I think people assume that voter fraud happened. Again, I don't even want to say if you want to say infinitesimal, I don't know if I could think of a word that would be even narrower than that. I would say that. And I don't like when we say, well, look.
So infinitesimal, he said like the amount of voter fraud is what he's saying. Even if it's really, really small, they still have to admit it's there. And that's the point of a law. Radio crew will catch you guys tomorrow. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. See us on the live stream. Take care. Whew. I almost got absolutely neck chopped by the end of the show clock for radio. Sorry about that. So Carville kind of admits like, hey, look, it is out there. But again, that's not what the frequency of a crime does not change whether or not it should be a crime. Like even if your town only has one murder every couple of years, murder should still be illegal in your town. Duh.
It's a very minor problem, but you got to admit it barely exists.
What they're doing, by the way, when the media crews, like you saw with the CNN host over with on Sirius, saying, well, I don't really want to say it, but I mean, it is there. They now have to say that it matters and that it should be a thing. They have to admit that Americans want it, but then you have to explain why. Why all of a sudden? Why all of a sudden are you saying, yeah, Joe Biden was kind of old and dead? Why didn't you say it then? And they have to create this long, weaving, winding, through the woods on our way to grandma's house manner of explanation as to why the receipts show that they were against it 15 minutes ago. And when you get that, by the way, they don't know what to do. So if it's not a very carefully crafted thing, which again, nothing today is very carefully crafted at all, which is really embarrassing, then what you get is this weavy, stammery, well. It's not going to work, bud. Even though I'm enjoying, again, the Civil War fist fights are a real hoot.
And it doesn't make any sense. Having said that, we are not going to win the war against some kind of ID. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fix anything, but maybe you just go along with it and move to the next
Well,
thing.
James, let me disagree. We have voter ID in most states.
You love even his own, again, even on, Politicon, his co-host says, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing? We already have voter ID. What are you saying? Democrats aren't going to be able to pull this. Even on the media side, it's flipping. On ABC's This Week, the Sunday show, where John Carl, notable, very much not conservative, fact checks Senator Mark Warner of the Commonwealth of Virginia on voter ID. Oh, what a time. What a time to be alive. Check it out.
I understand that you and I think every other Democrat oppose this so-called Save America Act, and there's a lot of reasons that you've put forward. But let me ask you very narrowly on the issue of photo ID.
Are you sure you want to stand against photo ID while the New Jersey stuff is coming? Are you sure you want to do this in a midterm year? Is this the hill to die on? Really? Here?
Requiring photo ID to register to vote. Is this something that Democrats should get behind?
We have
80-some% of Americans, 71% of
He's making the case very, very, very clear. Hey, this is what's going on. Hey, this is what is happening. Are you sure? He's giving him, by the way, this would be soft handing from an interviewer. In case this is a soft handing, because the interviewer, is saying, are you sure you want it? You kind of give him a double check here, like a little chance.
Democrats say they favor this?
You know what? In Virginia, we have voter ID and photo ID. I got to show my...
That's actually not the case. I mean, I'm a Virginia voter. You don't need to show a photo ID in Virginia.
Incredible. I love it. I love it. Oh, we have voter ID. Actually, no, I'm a voter in Virginia. You may have noticed that this studio is here in Virginia next to DC. And Breaker, I vote here, and we're going to get roasted if you're on ABC, an FCC regulated, licensed show that's going out on affiliate stations around the country for their Sunday programming slots. I know, because our show is, strangely enough, sometimes bordered up like after it on some of like the paid programming slots that they need to fill. Just some transparency with you, how you do things at time to time. John Carl here's like, dude, you're going to get us fined if you lie here. So I got to fact check you in the middle of it.
There are a wide range of things you can show for ID. And if you don't show one of those, you can sign an affidavit saying
sign an
attesting.
affidavit.
But so it's not.
Mark Warner's like scrambling. He's like, whoa. Okay, so you don't have to show an ID, but you do have to sign a piece of paper. Yeah, that'll get it. If I'm pretending to be someone else, let's play the part of the criminal here for a second. Let's say that I am going to go vote for Mark Warner. I am going to commit voter fraud. I am going to get to the polls before Mark Warner does, and I'm going to vote Republican. Oh no. So here's what I do. I show up with an old Blockbuster card that I've scribbled Mark Warner onto the back with. Yeah. And then I share a Costco card. I shave the beard, and I look really sad and depressed and like I've had way too much to drink for 10:30 a.m. And then if you kind of squint your eyes, kind of Mark Warner, you know? And then I go there and they're like, hey, you don't have like the approved IDs here. Are you willing to sign an affidavit? And I go, yeah, I sure am. And so I get out my handy dandy pen and I get out you get out the affidavit paperwork for me here. And I'm like, okay, you're going to sign this affidavit. I say, okay, Mark Warner, promise that this is in fact me, Mark Warner. And you know why that works? Because guess what? On the affidavit, there's not magic paper from Hogwarts that magically says, oh, this signature's not from Mark Warner. It's from Tony Kinnett. You don't have to be this retarded. For some people, it's choice. Now, it is splitting the party for a reason, because a lot of people recognize that outside of New York, there's going to be a lot of elections in purpler areas where being extra stupid is not really endearing to voters in the midterms. Traditionally, the midterms worked a lot like this. So just very, very briefly here, if you give me a second to give you kind of the analysis as to why that a lot of you know, but maybe before haven't articulated. The reason that midterms traditionally were really, really bad for the party in power is that voters would respond not to a bunch of media from candidates in off-year elections in the midterms, but from the general idea of how the country was doing. So they would vote against the party in power because all of these promises that were made during the campaigns from like 82 onward, all of these promises and things, oh, hey, wait a second, they didn't actually come true. So people would flip against them. And again, the media coverage of, oh, this failed promise, that resonated. Well, the reason in the last couple of years that you haven't quite seen that, and instead you've seen this promise of a big blue wave or a big red wave, and it really hasn't happened at all, is because instead people start judging their congressmen by how brain dead retarded they are on air, on my phone, all day. You know, as even in my car, as they say over in, video killed the radio star. It's just with me all the time. That is now making things kind of a problem because it's no longer just how's Congress kind of doing, call 811, how's my driving? No, now it's, hey, I heard you say something really, really, really stupid and I'm embarrassed to be associated with you, so I'm not coming out to vote. So midterms are becoming wildly low turnout elections and presidentials are becoming wildly high turnout elections. So that brings us over to my favorite part where all of this is coming to a head, Michigan. Michigan is becoming the head spot for where Democrats are struggling to beat the band in elections. Now, actually, hold on. I changed my mind. Hang on. Before we get to midterms, in the Michigan side of things, I want to stay on voter ID because I'm not joking and I feel so terribly about this. I have missed covering one story several days because we haven't really had a chance to do it. And because here in the United States, there is a large crew of individuals who appears to be advocating desperately for those who are not supposed to be in the country, who are advocating openly for those who should not be voting, and yet we seem to find them voting anyway. This brings us to the call from Republicans on deportations. So one of the things the Trump administration has done, because immigration courts are just clogged up to the rafters, the Trump administration has acted by invoking the Alien Terrorist Removal Court. That's the ATRC. That was on July, as of today, July 23rd, although earlier this week is when it was officially discussed by the administration. July 15th is when the Trump DOJ under Todd Blanche, who's, doing things, filed the court's very first ever application seeking removal of an unnamed individual. Here's what the ATRC does. The Alien Terrorist Removal Court is a federal court created by Congress in 1996 under the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act to handle government requests to remove non-citizens designated as alien terrorists, and in some cases also their immediate family members. So what does this court do? Well, this court consists of 5 district judges designated by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and it had never really received a petition or held a hearing until now. So what's going on? You have all of these federal immigration courts that were never supposed to get this clogged, because the idea that we would have millions and millions and millions of people coming here and just lying about their past and avoiding immigration courts and just being allowed to stay indefinitely, temporary, to hell with it, forever, and you get federal benefits and all this other nonsense. It turns out that that's really not what Congress had originally alluded. And even back in the 90s, a lot of the Bill Clinton kind of populist Democrats also recognized that illegal immigration was a problem. Like even Bernie Sanders used to be against illegal immigration because it undercuts the American worker, which is correct. That is a correct position of economic populism. He's not wrong there. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, although of course he's since changed his opinion on that. So the 1996 Congress put forward a bill, and it was signed into law by Clinton, in which there would be a special court created for those who are here illegally and they do extra naughty things, and they're determined to be associated with foreign terrorist organizations. So let's say that you're a Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and it's, hey, you seem to be associated with MS-13. You can be picked up and your immediate family members, and you are set before the secret court because it is a matter of national security. It's not a, mi abuela, see, we travel to the country and we just want a better life. That's an immigration court issue. Correct, it is. That's, again, the agricultural amnesty fight that's happening right now amongst a lot of Republicans that a lot of Americans don't want. That whole mess, that's not what this is. This is a, hey, you have MS-13 symbology tattooed on your knuckles, Kilmar. You were pulled over by the Tennessee Highway Authority for trafficking individuals. You previously have endangered your wife's son. Not your son, your wife's son. You really shouldn't be here. And so instead of doing the immigration proceedings, which James Boasberg of DC, we'll get to him later, can be an expletive and thwart the U.S. immigration law and the decisions of the State Department and the Office of the President. Instead, the secret court, and it is a secret court, does not have to say who is appearing before the immigration court. Doesn't have to. It's not in the rules. Instead, the Supreme Court Chief Justice appoints 5 designated judges, and then the Trump DOJ under Todd Blanche, and again, dudes who read the law, being in position, by the way, this is actually like coming back to the technocracy angle. A lot of people are rightfully so angry at the establishment, but one of the things that the establishment have always had up on the populist side of the aisle is that they're very, very good at doing their job and knowing what the rules are. And that's where you get loopholes and technicalities, and actually the parliamentarian says, every once in a while though, you find something that is just kind of useful. Now, up until now, it's been Brett Kavanaugh and Clarence Thomas in their Supreme Court decisions going, Mr. President, okay, you can't just levy unlimited tariffs like it's a Chuck E. Cheese birthday party and you're throwing tokens to the masses. You can't do that. But as the president, you can embargo anyone you want because the United States has always done that. That's why when people say that George Washington said, don't get involved in foreign affairs, those people are retarded because that's never been a policy of the United States effing ever. And the very first action of the United States Navy after piracy for British ships was killing Muslim pirates in the Mediterranean when all of the Brits paid off the Islamists instead of, dealing with it. So, and Morocco helped the United States as well in that. Just a little history there for you. So in this case, the President of the United States and Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who is doing a phenomenal job so far, by the way, and that is exactly my stance on the matter, said, okay, well, we're just going to go ahead and start filing. We're going to use this court. We're going to shuffle them on through. Let's pick it up. So Chief Judge Joan N. Erickson of the District of Minnesota held a sealed hearing on July 16th. Now, she raised questions about the alleged connection between the target's actions and the specific legal provisions invoked. The reason that she did, by the way, is because the U.S. federal government doesn't have to prove that you're a member of MS-13. The current law, and by which I mean the Constitution, states that the president's discretion determines whether something's a national security threat. In ye olden days, you didn't actually have to say, hi, are you a spy? Or even more so, you get out the parchment and go, dear other country, we have this young chap who says he's not a spy, and yet I found him spying and doing lots of violence. Is he one of your spies? Cordially yours, John Quincy Adams. That's not a thing. The president just said, you're kind of a spy. Get out. And then that worked because you know what? That's how you do national security policy. You don't have to go, well, actually, that he has the right to spy under the First Amendment. No, not a thing. So the federal government does not have to prove whether an illegal immigrant is actually a foreign terror threat. That's not a thing. It's not stated anywhere in the law. It's not stated anywhere in national security policy. Now, no public information is available on whether the DOJ met a July 22nd deadline for Judge Erickson on, additional evidence. But if the judge approves the application, then the target receives a notice in a public hearing to challenge it, which, by the way, even though appeals are going to go to the DC Circuit, it's not really clear whether or not they're going to be able to reveal anything to the public because the process allows the use of classified evidence that even the target may not fully see. So if the federal government can go, we have this classified evidence, no, you don't get to see it because it's classified, get out of the country, they can do that. You say, well, I really don't like that. Too bad. Too bad. It is a duly elected federal ability of this Constitution of the United States. If you're not a citizen and the government suspects, even just a hint, if Marco Rubio wakes up and says, good morning, I think that guy's a terrorist and he's not a citizen, the Secretary of State gets to throw you out. That's actually the rule. You don't like it? Tough. Constitutional authority upheld. Reiterated by both Federalist and then Democratic, Republican, and Whig, Democrat, and Republican administrations throughout the congressional history of the United States, as well as the federal judicial and every level of federal precedent. Now, here's a little extra fun because I mentioned Judge James Boasberg here. On July 14th, Chief U.S. District Judge James Boasberg issued a preliminary injunction trying to block Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, that directed consular officers to deny or revoke visas. And the reason he said that the State Department is not allowed to revoke or deny visa applications is because of the First Amendment. So here's what's happening. You have people from other countries in the world who said, I want to come to the United States on a visa. And we looked at those individuals and said, you seem to be associated with terror networks, or you seem to be associated with fomenting Marxist revolution. You're coming here from Cuba, or you seem to be on the payroll of Neverroy Singham, or et cetera ad nauseum. And the State Department, again, retains the constitutional authority to get out the rubber stamp and go, no. And so Judge James Boasberg said that, well, if they say they're here for journalism reasons, you have to let them in for First Amendment rules. Boasberg wrote that it, quote, sweeps into the category of foreign censorship, a substantial measure of the research, reporting, advocacy, and association through which the plaintiffs and institutions like it carry out their protected work, and it does so on the basis of viewpoint. Now, ironically, or perhaps not ironically, so put the guitar down, Alanis Morissette, the Boasberg decision does say and admits that there are serious national security issues with his own viewpoint and decision. So what does that mean? The appeals court is going to pimp smack this. The appeals court is going to reach back and open hand smack the Boasberg decision from the court. And the reason that, by the way, we haven't gotten any news yet since July 14th decision, I should point out that Rubio's team has not even acknowledged that they're following it. They haven't even said, okay, yeah, sure, we'll do this. We'll follow this. We'll go ahead and stop this until we get an appeal ready. Nope. They haven't even said, and by the way, in this case, this would be a major change by the Trump administration and just telling Boasberg to, go stuff it. Yeah, I mean, I would say that's probably a pretty decent move. Now, I wanted to cover those two things briefly because aside from the voter ID issue and aside from the ICE issue, the Democrat civil war is exceptionally rough. And I want to touch on that. Before I do, however, looks like the United States is hitting some infrastructure, either accidentally or on purpose. I want to make sure that we get everything right here on our side of things. Yes, we do. Here in the Middle Eastern conflict regarding Iran, we can now report that there are power outages in Bandar Abbas and throughout the wider Hormozgan province in Iran. So right around the Strait of Hormuz, the power has been cut off by the United States by those strikes. Again, it's not clear at this time whether that's kind of sub-infrastructure, like transformers or kind of those substations, which might have been hit, whether there are wider power lines that have also been hit, or whether or not the United States has finally made good on the president's threat to strike a power plant. And I'm not seeing just yet whether or not that, I'm not seeing just yet whether or not the Iranian regime ordered, or the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, ordered a strike on the Strait of Hormuz, which again was kind of the presidential threat, tit for tat, as it were. Excellent. The Iranian state media is now saying that they have rejected a ceasefire proposal from President Trump that was carried to Tehran by the Iraqi prime minister. The Iraqi prime minister has already come forward and said that he delivered no such. Prime Minister Ali al-Zadi's trip to Iran, no, he didn't actually deliver any kind of a ceasefire request. So it's just a fantastic, full of all kinds of different news evening. So again, the United States airstrikes have also hit the Telecommunications Regulatory Authority building in Bandar Abbas. Hey, remember when I told you a couple of minutes ago, or earlier on, and maybe an hour ago, that the United States is striking the telecommunication ability of the Iranian, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, to censor the internet and try to ban internet connections? Hitting the Telecommunications Regulatory Authority building in Bandar Abbas would be a surefire way of doing it. What a magical time. What a magical, magical time indeed. Now, there's a couple of other strikes that are happening. Khurramabad, which is up near the Iraqi border, right up close to it, I believe. And then, of course, more strikes hitting Avaz near the Iraqi and the Kuwaiti border. I want to get over to this civil war stuff, the continuing deterioration. All of this is coming to a head in Michigan. All of it. All of the voter ID, all of the deportation and the immigration issues, all of the Trump administration's policies internationally, all of it is coming to a head in Michigan. The reason is because there is a heated Senate primary, as we've talked about before, between Representative Haley Stevens in Congress and then Abdul El Sayed, who has gone back and forth on whether or not he's a socialist, although he is now endorsed by the DSA. Abdul El Sayed has, again, he's the doctor man he's not actually practiced medicine of any kind. He's the academic who's promising universal health care and to defund and abolish ICE, and also maybe a bunch of law enforcement. Now Democrats themselves are just going after him because they think Haley Stevens can beat Mike Rogers, which, to be fair, Haley Stevens is a lot more like Elisa Slotkin, the current senator of Michigan, who beat Mike Rogers by 0.3% in the last election. Haley Stevens has far more of a shot than Abdul El Sayed. Representative Hilly Scholten from Michigan, a Democrat, said this today. Abdul El Sayed and Graham Plattner campaigned and fundraised together. Oh boy.
Senator Bernie Sanders, who also was supporting Graham Plattner, who had a deeply problematic record with women, credibly accused by multiple sources of sexual assault.
Oh no. Oh no. So here you have even the CNN graphics side by side here. You're like, look, all of these socialists have endorsed Abdul El Sayed, and also Abdul El Sayed's campaigned with, Graham Plattner, the guy who allegedly, credibly, some might say, abused, raped, abused again, kidnapped, maybe messaged minors on Kik with his active profile that is to this day still active. Although the profile picture of him in a towel was taken down, the fake oyster farm, lied about his PTSD, that dirtbag. Democrats in the party are now trying to beat up beat up Abdul El-Sayed with Graham, not just Republicans. The Democrats are doing this. They're beating up, the socialists are trying, too late, they're trying to remove the tumor.
Of sexual assault, even.
Rape in one case.
Rape in one case. Abdul El-Sayed and Graham Plattner campaigned together. They fundraised together.
Oop. And this is coming in a couple of different ways. And I want to go backwards because there's a lot of campaign fire here and there and everywhere. By the way, I've seen some of the very kind chats, the super chats coming in this evening. They're very, 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 very kind. A very kind $19.99, a $20 super chat from Flora. You guys don't have to do that. James Holbein, $10 super chat. You guys really don't need to do so. Really appreciate it, though. In the meantime, though, there's a lot of dagger stabbing. And it appears that the endorsements have just lost their luster, wouldn't you know? What a real shame, I think. So Abdul El-Sayed's really excited because he has some people coming in and doing some endorsing. So he says, hey, Senator Tina Smith of Minnesota has endorsed me. Big Democrat senator, fighter for the working people, and all of the other butt kissing that comes with this kind of a thing. I mean, he is just rootin' tootin', alley-ootin' excited. Tina Smith has endorsed me. It's great. He did like a video of this. I'm not going to go through all of it, but he's like so excited that she's endorsed me. And his own Democrat opponents have been quick to rush out and say, hey, you know the last candidate that Tina Smith endorsed? Guy named Graham Plattner. Oops. Just oh, that's a struggle right there. That's rough. And then you get into the really dirty politics. So you remember during the 2024 election when Kamala Harris was struggling because the Democrats didn't want to just totally go all, it's the Jews just yet. And so they were really nervous about what to do with Dearborn, Michigan, because, you know, in Dearborn where they're like, yeah, kill the Jews. You know, basic Islamist kind of activity. Kamala Harris didn't really know what to tell him. So she's like, oh, we should be for Israel and Palestine, but mostly Palestine, but also sometimes I'm not. She didn't know what to do. And so the Trump administration, that's not correct. I apologize. Individuals associated with the Trump campaign before the last couple of days of the election put up like a Kamala Harris is for Israel billboard in Dearborn, and a lot of Democrats stayed home and didn't vote. You know, kind of a lot like that BLM lady down in Texas just said she and a lot of black people aren't coming to vote for Democrats, like James Tallarico. Anywho, it's one of the things that helped Trump win Michigan. So Haley Stevens, again, the opponent of Abdul El-Sayed, is now trying to do a little shenanigans of her own. So she sent out a campaign emailer. There's a little kind of a poster thing today saying that Mike Rogers, the Republican candidate, has endorsed Abdul El-Sayed. And so she sets this up to look like it's an Abdul for U.S. Senate like announcement. Now, she's using the official Abdul for U.S. Senate graphics, which might be copyrighted and may get her in legal trouble with the FEC. I'm not sure you're allowed to do this like this. So she makes all of this like, oh, the Republican likes Abdul. And again, the joke is that Mike Rogers has said, well, yeah, sure, give me the socialist guy, and I will beat him within an inch of his life in the election. You know, Haley Stevens, the worst that you can say about her is that she's kind of dumb and that she talks a lot like a mixture of Joe Biden and one of the Chris Farley characters on SNL. And that's kind of the stab against her. You know, Abdul El-Sayed, he's a major problem for a number of reasons. And so then at the very bottom, it's, oh yeah, by the way, this is Haley Stevens for Senate. Yeah, so that's some nice dirty fighting. A good time, really, I think, you know. Now, AOC, because she's trying to run for president, she's endorsed Abdul, but yet she really wants to run for president in 2028. She's like, so whoever wins, we support. I just want everyone to have fun.
Why should Congresswoman Stevens lose her primary? Pardon? Why should Congresswoman Stevens lose her primary? Why should she? Why should she lose? Oh, I don't think this is about why anyone should lose.
You endorsed her opponent, though. So the question asked to AOC is, why do you think Haley Stevens should lose? Because as you saw in the CNN graphic a minute ago, one of the endorsees for Abdul El-Sayed, one of the Plattner partners, well, you know, AOC endorsed him. So why do you think Haley should lose? So AOC's like, I don't think anyone should lose. Like, participation trophies for everyone, all 2 branches of government, Venezuela south of the equator, and Deloitte, the accounting firm who's leaking chemicals in West Virginia, with all of that drinkable air, like that kind of AOC moment here.
And I think that is a frame that is really limiting. And
a frame that's really, yes, primaries are limiting. That's one of the purposes of a primary, is to limit the choices in the general election ballot. Huh? It's kind of cool how that works.
it is kind of, I don't believe in kind of a vengeful or negative politics.
I don't believe in a vengeful or negative politics. Yeah, okay, sure.
I've enjoyed working with her, and you know, I think that it's been, we enjoy a good relationship as colleagues. So this is has nothing to do with her or her leadership.
Why don't you think she's the best to represent Michigan in the Senate?
So why didn't you endorse her then? Is what's asked.
Why don't you think she's the best to go up against Congressman Mike Rogers?
Again, well, first of all, whoever wins this primary, we are forcefully supporting, no matter what. Let's get that twisted. We are here to win Democrats a majority in the House and in the Senate.
That's a good political answer, by the way. That's the correct answer. Now you should say, look, if you're going to endorse, then make a case for why you're endorsing. I don't care for this otherwise. I don't care for if you're going to be silent, say, look, I'm not getting involved in a primary. It's a primary. My go-to answer is I don't care. That's the best answer there. Or I don't know enough about it. And try to be honest. I mean, if you're in Congress, you probably should know, because the DNC kind of sends out stuff on who to support or what their qualities are. That's kind of done. That's a thing.
Whoever wins this primary, this is what primaries are for. We come behind our nominee and we make sure that we stay focused on the task ahead of us. You know, I think that in the state of Michigan, and I think what we're seeing across the country is this is more a referendum on the role of special interests and dark money in Democratic primaries than it is about any one individual. And I think what Michiganders are seeing is over $50 million in special interests everywhere from...
The mic cuts out because they're using a piece of celery with that parasite to record the audio. Now, someone did ask her, well, hey, don't you think all of these socialists who refuse to say that they're communists might start doing kind of communist things? And she's like, no, that's silly. You're so silly. You're silly.
You can do what they want. I'm not here to be the belief police around here.
But isn't there concern that, this slippery slope towards socialism inevitably ends up as full-blown communism? I mean, no?
I'm not concerned about America turning into a communist country in a year. That is I think that is, I think that's, I think it's very silly.
It's just silly.
You just think about how impossible it has been to raise the minimum wage in America in 10, 15, 20 years.
Now that's so it's the answer is not that, it would be wrong for the United States. I don't think it would do that. It's, guys, we can't even get socialism through the country. How are we going to get communism through the country? Stellar answer. Just real sweet. Excellent. Now there is one final story that I have wanted to share with you this evening, because we are just about out of time, but I can't help it. I just can't. There is one final, just chef's kiss story to share with y'all. And it all has to deal with the Associated Press, of all places, of all things. So the Associated Press released this heartbreaking, incredible news story today. I mean, just pulls at your heartstrings, that ever since USAID was shut down, remember when Elon Musk went through all of that and said the United States was funding transgenderism in Colombia, remember? And said we were funding Sesame Street in Iraq and atheism in Nepal and all of these other things. And then the Democrats came forward and said, no, that's not true. Also, give me the money, and tried to sue to keep USAID open forever and ever, amen. Well, the Associated Press is now reporting, this is just the most incredible story I have ever seen in my entire life. truly. The AP posts at 4:34 a.m. this morning, quote, in impoverished Nepal, where a conservative culture leaves openly trans people with few legal job options, the impact on aid workers' lives was particularly crushing. So the people whose salaries were just paid by USAID because they were trans. That's what the Associated Press is saying here. Quote, starving and scared, around 100 LGBTQ plus aid workers left jobless by the funding cuts have turned to sex work to survive, walking the streets alongside the very people they once fought so hard to help. Guys, you stopped paying all the trans people, and now they have to be whores. I mean, oh my God.
These transgender sex workers operate in the shadows alongside a busy highway in central Nepal, risking their lives for a few dollars
risking their lives for a few dollars. Oh my God.
Recently, many of them worked not as sex workers, but as aid workers, including Ruby Lama, who dedicated years of her life to helping prevent the spread of HIV in Nepal's marginalized communities.
Wait a minute, preventing the spread of HIV. Hold on a second here. So you're telling me that we paid this dude to pass out condoms. Oh, hang on. I want to make sure that we get that exactly right. This dude who thinks he's a lady, we paid him, your tax dollar, my tax dollars, paid this dude in a dress in Nepal to pass out condoms because the people sleeping with whores, with prostitutes, can't stop themselves from getting AIDS. Again, this conservative culture, the people who are virgins until they're married and only sleep with their spouse, they're not getting HIV and AIDS. The people who are whoring around in the conservative culture, they don't have HIV and AIDS. Curious, interesting, strange.
But after the U.S. cut its foreign aid funding, Ruby and around 300,000 other aid workers worldwide.
300,000 people around the world you were paying to pass out condoms. You were paying Costco free sample people that were handing out Durex. Bro.
Lost their jobs. With no other employment available, she is surviving now by working the streets.
Now, I know there's a lot of different things in the world that you can do. And some people, including those from Nepal, have already pointed out that there are a lot of jobs that are like physical labor, manual labor jobs. You could go shovel gravel in Nepal and make money. You can. They don't check. I mean, I guess if you show up in a dress to a job site, your boss might look at you and say, get out of here. I don't,
Alongside the very people she once fought so hard to help.
Gee, that sounds so much like a real female. You can almost pretend the Adam's apple isn't bobbing up and down rapidly.
आउँदाखेरि कोही मान्छेहरु डिल गर्न आउँदाखेरि पनि डर लाग्ने के भन्ने कसो भन्ने भनेर चाहिँ अलिकति नर्भस भए जस्तो हुने पहिला चाहिँ अब हाम्रो जुन यो
There's the USAID, like original signs. Respect the Pride Progress flag. Respect the diversity. In this house, we pass out condoms.
फन्डिङ थियो युएसको जुन फन्डिङ हुँदा चाहिँ अब कन्डम फ्री नै थियो.
Condoms are free. Johnny Appleseed. I'm sorry, phrasing. Oh my God, come on.
Lubricant भन्ने अरु
Also lube. Oh, good grace. Come on now.
एनजीओहरुले बाँड्दैन हाम्रै फ्रेन्डसिट एउटाले हो यहाँ हेटौडामा चाहिँ मकवानपुरमा अनि यसले पनि फ्रीमै.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, all these NGOs, these non-governmental organizations. Again, you were told this wasn't happening. I was told this wasn't happening. And here they are. It's just like, you know what? You're not having enough sex. You out there, you can't control yourself. You're just a stupid mammal. Probably been listening to the Bloodhound Gang song over and over. Probably wondering what the Discovery Channel is. Ain't nothing but mammals. You're just like, we can't stop you from just everywhere all the time. And so quick, because AIDS is spreading. Oh my, the US taxpayer, quickly, right here, right now. Where are all the Democrats who are whining about Iran and like Israel? The Jews. Come on now.
बाँड्ने हो सेमै थियो यो पनि अब जस्तो यो एचआईभी को ट्रिटमेन्टहरु एचआईभी रोक्नको लागि चाहिँ खाने यो
The United States, so again, now there is, so if you get HIV, there was a time in which it was just the timer. I mean, we all had the health books where it said, hey, if you have HIV or someone has HIV, you're just counting down the days until it becomes full-blown AIDS. Now, there are different drugs that you can take that essentially push the AIDS part of that out into the future. You have to pay for those medications here in the United States. I want to make that again clear. Here's my issue, and this should upset Americans of Republican and Democrat background, because Democrats and a lot of populist Republicans, because it's a big tent party, you want there to be like federal aid for things. Federal aid programs, right? Medicare and Medicaid. Right now, anyone who's watching this show, if you, due to touching HIV blood, it got through the mucosal layer somewhere, you contracted HIV. You would have to pay for that yourself. But under the Biden administration, again, same thing. But if you're in Nepal, free condoms, free lubricant, and then, of course, if you get HIV from decisions you made, from humping that you chose to do, well then, quickly, taxpayer money, all of the HIV medication out. I'm of the opinion, I don't like a lot of federal spending. I don't like a lot of federal spending projects. I don't. I think that a lot of free market, not corporate cronyism markets, which is a lot of what we have, like actual free trade operation, that does in fact supplant the need for a lot of federal programs. However, if I were going to have federal programs, if we're going to be passing out the HIV drug to people, they damn well better be Americans. At least make them my fellow countrymen. I would far more rather that an individual who is transgender here in the United States, who is a sex worker here in the United States, illegally, like prostituting around, I would rather that they are given the anti-HIV drug than someone in Nepal. That, to make it very, very clear and binary here, I would rather, again, both of those I think are not good. I would rather my tax dollars, not be spent on that at all. But if they have to be, if that were the choice, I want to make that clear where that line would fall. All right. Now, I know there were a couple of mail time questions this evening. It's 8:38 p.m. Eastern, where I am, I would really, really, really like to get through a couple of some of the questions there have been some questions about Iran. There was only one question I will hit before we're done for the evening, because I already kind of answered it yesterday, but it's a good revision. And that is this, Tony, what about this section 212 or 219, this like section of the U.S. defense authorization, this funding bill that merges our military with Israel, with the Jews? What about it? We talked about this on the show, but I just kind of briefly mention it because the guy may not have been here yesterday. And also, just real quick answer, the bill doesn't say that anywhere. It actually requires Israel, along with the UK, France, Australia, Japan, the Danish even. There are a ton of other countries that are already held to this standard where, hey, you develop some new tech on defense, you have to share it with us by the law. We don't have to buy it from you. You have to share it with us for free. That's what it does. That's it, seriously. Like if there's a new anti-drone measure that's developed in Poland, they have to share it with us free of charge. They're not allowed to keep it and sell it to the US, like in the patent office. No, they have to give it to us because we're helping them out. That's what this would do for Israel. That's the whole thing. That's the whole bill. Sorry. A lot of people who want to do clickbait crap and like tell you that it's, oh my God. No, that's not it. So there you go. We'll see you guys tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Again, helping us out by subscribing to our new YouTube channel at Tony Kinnett Cast, KINNETTCAST, would help us a massive ton. Until then, though, take care.